You want me to just go topless?
No. Topless.
Not yet.
All right.
Maybe at the end.
Topless but blurred.
Yeah.
Hello and welcome to the Black T-Shirt Club.
I feel left out.
Club which Bill is not part of. Is the show about Nathan or Landslide?
In my opinion, it's a
Nate Slide.
This show is going to be a show. It might be amazing content, but I feel like it's going to be.
Welcome to the DeFi podcast, where we discuss all things DeFi. We host in-depth discussions with industry leaders with a focus on the Avalanche ecosystem. The content of this podcast is for informational purposes only. Statements made by hosts or guests reflect their own beliefs and opinions and is not investment advice. The host or guest may have personal investments in any assets being discussed.
Welcome to the DeFi podcast. Today we're talking to Nathan from Landslide, which is a project that connects Avalanche with the Cosmos IBC. Landslide aims to enhance interoperability between blockchain networks and create new opportunities for cross-chain DeFi. Welcome, Nathan.
Let's go. Thank you, sir.
We're also joined today by Breevie.
What's up, everybody? I'm Breevie, head of growth at GoGoPool. If you don't know what GoGoPool is, we're a permissionless liquid staking protocol with the specific vision of expanding the subnet economy.
I'm very excited to have you guys on the show today. I've known Breevie and Nate for a while, and you guys are kind of in a really interesting spot. It's kind of a packed house today, so we're going to try to keep it a little tight. But Nate, you were really interesting to me when I first, actually, you know what? I first heard about you when you did the subnet, the one-man show Subnet Summit last year. And you basically interviewed a ton of people across both the Avalanche and the Cosmos ecosystems, which I thought was just really cool, kind of bringing those two together. So can you talk a little bit about like how you got your start in crypto, but then also like how you kind of grew up in both Avalanche and Cosmos?
Yeah. I got my start. I was class of 2015, and the ETH ETF is now trading. So we've won, and maybe we should just all go home. that's it. Now there's a banner on Wall Street, and that's the end of the ETF, and all of our visions have been totally completed. Yeah. So I aped in back then, and I was in New York, which was where Consensus was like in the early days, and like it was out on the Lorimer stop on the L train, and so I used to just spend a lot of time around like the early ETH meetups when everything was just crazy and you didn't know what was going on. And then I aped into ETH, and through my connections at Cornell, where I went to school, like I got to follow all the early Avalabs team as they were publishing research on hacking distributed, which was like at the time basically, and you could still check it out, but Goon and a lot of the Ari Jules and some of the early like Mev dudes were all like sort of reviewing early ICOs and DPoS and all these concepts. They were just publishing a lot of research. So I started following them there. Yeah, I just went to a bunch of early meetups, hosted a ton in Brooklyn. Like some of the protocols did really well, some of them did horribly, and I parlayed that into like a small venture studio at the time. And then since those days, I've invested in about 400 different Web3 protocols, the big one being Avalanche. And we've tried to, since Mainnet, tried to grow the Avalanche ecosystem based on all the white papers and all the research that was coming out of the folks who are now at Avalabs. And then as far as Cosmos and Avalanche are like very, very similar in ethos. They all think that they all are about app chains in their own layer one, rather than this sort of L2 narrative or the L3 or the L4 and that type of thing. The early Cosmos dudes trained under Goon, like a Jedi kind of transition there. I mean, there were only a couple people in the space at the time, and like the really big engineers were all kind of studying with each other and knew each other very well. And so there was a lot of overlap in the thesis, which is just the app chain thesis. And now we're seeing this sort of play out in Avalanche with your own layer one. Now we're connecting that to the crown jewel of Cosmos, which is IBC. For those people who don't know what that means, inter-blockchain communication is like the safest interoperability protocol. It's not a bridge, but it functions like a bridge. And we connected. Our team built the IBC Lite client for Avalanche. It's done. Halborn's finished the audit, and we're in the final stages of remediation and open source.
Okay. There's a lot there. I want to come back to a lot of what you said, but first let's pass on to Breevie. Did you come into Avalanche from Luna? How did you get into the ecosystem?
So I originally started off on Luna, just kind of like heard about it, and then just really kind of fell in love with the DeFi that was kind of happening on there. For anyone out there, I know we all know what happened to Luna now in the present, but back in the day when Luna was at its peak, it was a beautiful ecosystem of extremely great developers and great community members as well. So I started off on there up until the big thing happened. Once the big thing, well, I guess I started there and then started podcasting there. I interviewed somewhere between 40, 50 different Terra Luna projects. Was just kind of pumping out episodes up until the bad thing happened. And then after that, kind of lost, didn't really know where I was going to go from there, but knew that I had this love for Web3 still. Eventually hooked up with Steven. Steven kind of like GoGoPilled me, talked to me about these subnet things and Avalanche. And at the time I was Terra Luna Maxi, so I didn't know anything about anything else that was really happening within Web3. And so when Steven kind of told me about subnets and app chains and all these different things, I started researching more into them, became extremely bullish, and then obviously started working with the GoGoPool team originally as a podcast host, kind of doing AVAX ecosystem space on the weekly, interviewing AVAX projects, and then eventually kind of built myself to this kind of career that I'm in right now, where I'm head of growth. So I handle a lot of the marketing strategies, business strategies, and then also do podcasting as well, like I'm doing right now.
Gotcha. Okay. Nate, you mentioned that you guys built, as part of Landslide, the first light client for Avalanche for IBC. So can you unpack that for us a little bit? What exactly does that mean?
Yeah. Do you want me to share my screen and kind of go over how IBC works?
Yeah, sure.
Great. Web3 is just about ledgers, right? It's just about like, can you verify what happened in your ledger? So chain A and chain B are just two different ledgers. And how do you confirm changes that happen between them without something in the middle, right? So like when you think about a bridge is a set of validators that you're paying to validate state changes. But that means you have to pay middlemen to do the work. So when you look at Wormhole, Axelar, Layer 0, Across, Circle, any of these other bridges, there are people running businesses, basically validators, in between these chains, and you're paying them to do the work of verification. With IBC, you don't actually have to do that at all, because you're running these things called light clients. And a light client is basically like a light version of, in this case, like chain B, right? That's running on chain A. So if for even simpler version, like if you're trying to figure out what happened in Avalanche and you're running on Atom, you need to basically have like a forked version of Avalanche inside your own layer 1 so you could figure out what's going on. And you want these things open source because you need to be sure that they're the actual ledger that you're running. And then you want them to be super safe. So if you're looking at sort of the history of IBC, these light clients are all running right now on Cosmos. And so all the Cosmos chains talk to each other over IBC. And the Interchain Foundation, they're tasked with the open source development of IBC. And so they gave us a grant to build the light client for Avalanche. So now anyone who wants to talk to Avalanche over IBC just uses this open source light client to query state changes, and then they can basically set up a relayer between their two chains. Now, the critical piece here is that there's nothing in the middle except relaying. There's nobody you pay to verify state changes. You're just paying people to relay information. Just like HTTP, you relay packets of HTTP information between parties. You do the same thing with IBC relaying. And if a packet ever fails, it just reverts. And that's why you see, like, if you take a look at the total volume of IBC, it's about 40 billion processed and $0 lost, because there's very little trust assumption you have to make. The only thing that you're trusting is that chain A and chain B are valid. So like Avalanche and Atom would be valid. And that's the same trust assumption you make in a bridge, except when you make a bridge, you have to verify, you have to trust that the bridge validators themselves are valid. So that's the basics of IBC.
So right now, essentially like what I use IBC for is I have tokens on one Cosmos chain. I want to send them to another Cosmos chain. I just use the wallet, send it from one Kepler, just from one wallet to another. So once this is launched on Avalanche, what is that going to mean? Does that mean like I'm using my Kepler wallet and I can send a token over to an Avalanche subnet and now it's going to show up in my wallet there? Is this the main initial use case? What do you think people are going to use it for? When in your feedback, what have people kind of said that they're excited about?
First, they're excited about meme coins because that's where all the attention is. So getting all of these meme coins on Avalanche into Cosmos, like onto osmosis, that's like everyone's excited about that. And then the idea of controlling a master account on Avalanche and having that master account control other interchain accounts. So you have your private key and your public key on your wallet on Avalanche, and you're controlling 10 other accounts, one on ETH, one on Atom, one on Osmosis, one on Polkadot, one on Solana. So these sort of interchain account abstraction tools are also kind of cool. And then Omer at the foundation just sort of shared some info about this, but the validator sets, and as ACP 77 kind of emerges, you're going to have cross-chain validator sets, which is really cool. So Atom validators have partnered with us, and they're going to validate the Landslide layer 1 on Avalanche, but they can also do that for other layer 1s. And that's exciting. Obviously, there's a lot to unpack there, but you want to create partnerships with other chains because you need their users.
Okay, so but I missed a piece because you were talking about how when you first started in the Avalanche ecosystem, you were kind of investing in projects, and you invested in a whole bunch, not just in Avalanche, but you invested in like a total of hundreds of projects. And now you're building this communication layer essentially between, not just Avalanche and Cosmos, but I think starting with Avalanche and Cosmos. So what happened? Did you start a company that's doing this? What was the vision? This is the initial focus and it's going to branch out from here. Like, what was the motivation to start Landslide?
It was the missing piece, right? I mean, if you look we started building 2 years ago, we had no bridges, basically. We had no way to talk to anybody else. And there was no safe, communication outside of Avalanche. And all of our users were a specific set of users. If we're ever going to make these tokens moon, we need cross-chain communication that's secure. So the motivation was, I was paying attention in Goon's class, in his decentralized class, which is like, we need layer 1s and we need a lot of them. And that's the only way we're going to scale. You need to have compliant institutional layer 1s where they get to choose their own validator set and they get to choose their counterparty and they get to choose if they want to run a purple validator or whatever that means in their jurisdiction, that they run a purple validator. That was the only place, like if you pan out and you look at where the institutions are, they're building layer 1s on Avalanche because they can control that. And we were like, okay, there's no way for those institutions to communicate outside to other groups. So what's the largest interoperability protocol and the safest that we could bring into Avalanche and that would provide some value? We think that's IBC.
You mentioned some other protocols that are similar to what IBC does. So I want to come back to that in a minute. But first, Breevie, you work for GoGoPool, but you're kind of connected to a bunch of ecosystems. What is kind of GoGoPool doing at this intersection of Avalanche and Cosmos?
So for one thing, I learned about Nathan and Landslide a few years back, and I remember speaking with Nathan. I was like, "Hey man, what are you building?" And he said, "Oh, I'm building interoperability between Cosmos and Avalanche," and he said it very nonchalantly, like so nonchalant that the epicness of that was almost lost on me in that moment until I had to be like, "Wait, hold on, dude! Like, what are you doing?" These two things that weren't connected are going to be connected. So it started there. We started doing AVAX ecosystem space, interviewing a bunch of different projects together, and just staying really close, working really closely together. And then now, as GoGoPool has continued to grow, we released the GoGoPool product about a year ago or so. When we first started, we were just able, it's very similar to Rocket Pool, pretty much. You're able to launch a validator at half cost. And then when we launched our one-click launcher, that's when things started to really start to expand for us. We started to see a large amount of Avalanche validators start to get launched. And it's because a lot of retail individuals who may have had 1100 AVAX, but might not have had the technical knowledge to launch a node and to manage a validator. They didn't have to, all they had to do was click a button and then just kind of sit on their hands. And so we started to see a lot of retail people come in. And so what wound up happening is GoGoPool grew to representing somewhere around 18% of Avalanche's entire validator segment. And so now that we have so many different validators, I believe it's somewhere around 270, we're getting a lot of different L1s coming to us and asking us, hey, we need help with our initial validator set. Can you help us? And very similar situation with Nathan, where he's about to launch, about to go to mainnet. He's going to need a bunch of validators, and the easiest place where you can find those validators, as opposed to you having to search on Twitter for a validator, reach out to them personally, set up some sort of contract between you two, instead of you having to do all of that. GoGoPool kind of comes in, and we have our 270 validators that are within our community, and we can speak with them directly and say, hey, this is a trusted partner, Nathan. We can tell them exactly what the product is, and we can keep them informed about any sort of updates and everything like that that's happening. And I'm very, very excited to talk about this too, because it's absolutely beautiful to see our two different ecosystems kind of come together. And for us to have over 150 validators, not just from Avalanche, but also from Cosmos as well, sitting in a Telegram group, literally just waiting for Nathan to say, hey, I want 50 validators. And then immediately Nathan has 50. And so that's where kind of GoGoPool kind of comes into this. We're doing a lot of the boots on the ground work, getting as many validators for this absolutely epic technology that's about to come out to ensure that it can happen and it can launch extremely well. And then on top of that, we are building something in the background to make it extremely easy for all those validators who want to validate Landslide, make it extremely easy for them to just push a button and connect, which I won't talk too much about now, but give you a little teaser.
I want to pose a question to Nathan. I think a lot of people in crypto have a pretty good understanding that a lot of different chains are very siloed, and everybody has their own set of maxis, and they don't really get along very well that often. So how do you see Landslide having the ability to get past people's quarrels with each other and actually get them to kind of swallow their pride and bridge to a different chain or interact with protocols on a completely different chain than the one that is like, let's say their favorite chain?
Money.
That's a good answer.
That's the only answer that will work, right? Like all of our particular memes and ideas that we have in our head, like, and whatever religion we're based in our cult, like we're all our central operating system that we have between us is money. And the only way we'll succeed is if we bring them more users and the token goes up. But like, if you want to ape in to Atom and you like the idea of Atom, like you shouldn't have to go to a single place to buy it. You should just be able to go wherever you're most comfortable and just throw some money at the problem and buy it. So yeah, it's like, if the more dexes we can list on, the better for everybody. You want your token to go up, great. Put it on as many dexes as you can. Don't pay exorbitant listing fees for centralized exchanges and get it out. Like that's the whole reason that we're all here, because you want to control your assets, you want to control your narrative, and you want to control the means of production.
I'll speak a little bit from like the community building perspective as well. We've been doing all these different spaces and speaking with all these different potential partners just so that we can, one, start to drum up the hype of this, right? Like this is a absolutely major, major movement that's starting to get started. And it's extremely important that this happens. It's like what Nathan said. If I want to buy AVAX, I just want to buy AVAX. Like that's it. I don't want to have to switch to this network and send it over here, send it over there. I just want to buy it. And as of right now, everybody can't just buy the thing. And when protocols do innovative things like what Nathan has built over there at Landslide, I think it's extremely important that we share that light with as many community members as possible. But also, in sharing that light, it creates a community of people who also understand how important this is as well, so that when Nathan launches, we're not just launching to 0 people who know what's happening. We're launching to an entire community of people supporting Landslide, supporting Web3 interoperability.
We're getting a ton of support from the Cock community. We're in Avalanche. If you're not familiar with that, Cock and You is a meme coin with like 73,000 holders. And that is, really dumb. And there's a reason why we like that. It's dumb. It's easy to understand. So we spend a lot of time explaining the thing and the vision and the what. But dude, the thing is, slide Cock to the Cosmos and everything else writes itself. We got to have a little bit of fun here while we're like building Web3, but you can slide tech, you can slide AVAX. You become part of this like weird meme where we're going to set up some slides at the Avalanche Summit where people can just slide down a slide or whatever. You got to have a little bit of fun here.
Nathan, you may want to go into the slide token.
So people know what I'm actually talking about. So the one trust assumption that you have with IBC is that chain A and chain B are valid. And so we have to keep our Landslide chain secure. And we're going to do that obviously with proof of stake on Avalanche. So just like AVAX tokens secures the Avalanche network, slide tokens secure the Landslide network. So that's the name of the token, and you can use it to basically slide assets between chains.
Okay, let me just take it back for a second because Nate, one thing I didn't understand. This is a kind of a heavy topic, so I'm hoping maybe you kind of simplify it for us. But in terms of like these XLR, layer 0, the chain link protocol that talks between all the different chains, wormhole, and now like slide, right? How do you think about these versus each other? Are you a direct competitor to some of these guys? Is it different? If they are different, like how is it different? How do you think about that?
Yeah, I'm just going to share my screen and just show what the DeFi Llama bridge volume is. So if you look at like number of chains, like IBC is on 86 plus chains. These are Cosmos and also now Solana via composable. Picasso. They're also live on ETH and Polkadot. So IBC is just on the most number of chains of any bridge. And then if you look at the number of 24-hour transactions, it's high by a long shot. Like the 24-hour transactions is 56,000. And it's number 4 in USD volume for a month. Basically neck and neck with Across, Circle, and Layer 0. So Landslide will just be cataloged under IBC. So we're just all of our volumes going to be going through the IBC module. So yeah, I would say that IBC is a competitor to multi-sig bridges like Wormhole, which is a 13 of 19 bridge that has failed in the past. In terms of like Circle is run by obviously a single corporation, and they're the only ones that are allowed to run that infrastructure. So why set up Landslide and IBC at all? Because it's democratizing access to validating and to relaying. And the whole purpose of us being here in the first place is that you want access to the means of production. You want to be able to own the network that you're running and benefit from your own activity. So yeah, that's the sort of explanation. And just to follow it up, like with Avalanche, you can run an infinite validator set, unlike other chains where you're really restricted by the consensus algorithm. So on Cosmos, you're running Tendermint consensus. We forked the Cosmos SDK and we threw Tendermint away and we replaced it with Avalanche consensus. So in Landslide, you can have an infinite validator set and you don't suffer from performance degradation because you're not every validator is not talking to every other validator. You're talking to a subset of validators like you see in Avalanche mainnet.
Gotcha. Okay. And listen, this slide network, have you done this already in testnet? Is this, if you have done it, have you done it with a large validator set? What's the performance look like versus, regular IBC communication?
Good question. Yeah, we're just starting testnet this week, so we're gonna share benchmark performances within the next couple of weeks.
Oh, cool. And then kind of selfishly, is there like an incentivized testnet? Like, can I go participate and be involved? Yeah. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Talk about that a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we want to like incentivize users to slide assets between chains and to set up, the dumber the campaign, the better. So we've, set up partnerships with as many meme coins as we can. So we're going to be, and we have some other hilarious marketing campaigns around the term Landslide, because there's a couple big events coming up that could go in one direction or another. And that's going to be important for us as our go-to-market. Whereas, X person wins in a landslide or X team wins in a landslide. So that it's sort of like newsjacking for it. But yeah, we're running our incentivized testnet on bonus block. And we've got a ton of tokens to give out as we're not doing like a large public token sale.
What is bonus block?
Bonus block is .io. They're a platform for incentivized testnet exercises.
Awesome. And the rough estimate of when you think testnet will be over and you're aiming to go live?
Yeah, end of October go live, depending on obviously the network performances. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Breevie and the GoGoPool team, they're talking to dozens of other, teams kind of like yours who, for whatever reason, they want to set up their own validator set to launch a network or a chain or an app or whatever. So like when you look at the Avalanche, like launching on Avalanche, what does that look like for you? Are you going to have to invest a bunch of capital at the beginning? You're going to run a bunch of your own validators. You want the network to be totally permissionless at the beginning. How are you thinking about, is it the incentivized testnet that you're going to, use as some way to create a decentralized network at the beginning? How are you thinking about that?
We want to do it like Avalanche ran theirs. So people KYC'd, and as long as they stood up the node within a certain threshold, they got enough tokens to run the node. That was a pretty reasonable launch for the Avalanche network. We're going to work on a similar concept. We want it to be permissionless. Obviously, we want it to be stable, but we really want it to be permissionless and just sort of infinite validator set. So that's why we reached out to the Atom Hub first, because we want to give them tokens to validate. And we're working on other ecosystems as well, like trying to, for instance, Binance is a big one, like the BNB chain. We want to incorporate as many other validators from other chains so that we can build relationships there economically. And once we red pill them, right, like they're set up on a Landslide validator, they should set up mini pool operators at GoGoPool so that they can validate and earn rewards from other layer ones. I think, Kevin shared some stat. There's probably 4,000 Avalanche layer ones in testnet. GoGoPool's model on that is a slam dunk, right? You need all those layer ones need validators, and they're going to need them not only from Avalanche, but from outside the ecosystem, because you want to have overlaps with communities you don't know, so you can get users that you don't know. So this is all like a game about users, right? Once you launch your token, like you don't just want it to be on Trader Joe, like you want it to be on Osmosis and Jupiter and Uniswap. Like you really want to have a one-click node deployment, but a one-click liquidity deployment too.
So the first step is going to be Landslide launches. It creates this communication layer between Cosmos and Avalanche, right? And then what's the next step after that?
Yeah, next step is Binance through a partnership with Toki TOKI. They've built like a Binance-like client inside of a trusted execution environment. So they're our route to PancakeSwap. So all of the Avalanche tokens we're going to list one by one on PancakeSwap. And then so our route to Solana is via composable finance. They have a Solana light client. They also have a Polkadot light client and an Ethereum light client. Ethereum is sort of the goal here because that's where a ton of the liquidity is and a ton of the attention is. So there are a couple different teams building on ETH. Union is another one. They've built a ZK light client. Light clients are really expensive to run on Ethereum, so that's why it's been a sticking point. But after Union, sort of our route there. And then there are a couple interesting things happening with Bitcoin, especially as it relates to the maximalism. Babylon chain is a Cosmos-based chain that allows you to stake Bitcoin and earn altcoin yield. So we have a partnership with them. So you stake Bitcoin and earn Slide or earn GGP, and we're going to essentially bring Bitcoin community who stake through Babylon into Avalanche. So there's an appetite for Bitcoin on Avalanche, and we're going to see that type of security from Bitcoin and economic sort of overlap as it comes through Babylon. And then there's obviously all the ETH-L2s. Polymer, we have a partnership with them that they're building on like Base, Optimism, the whole super chain stack. So they're our route into the ETH-L2s. And our goal is to get AVAX itself into as many different places. And the foundation's been very helpful, and Avalab has been very helpful in helping us out with that. So we're going to see some great liquidity deployed cross-chain. And we've just been lining up sort of incentives and liquidity. So to facilitate that launch.
Yeah, I think at GoGoPool, we're really happy to be working with the Landslide L1. We think that this is a very high quality project. Just curious if you could talk a little bit about the timelines in terms of being fully sort of live and all the features working as you see fit.
Sure. Halborn finished its 7-month audit like a couple weeks ago. So that's done, and as soon as we finish that, we're open sourcing it, and people can take a look at all of the audit results. So that will be open source. And then Oak Security is spent the last couple of months auditing our Cosmos client, basically our Cosmos SDK. We passed that really well. So that's in the final stages of remediation. So testnet should be up like within the next week. So we'll have Nirvana Cloud hosting a ton of our RPC clients. We'll spend the next couple months in testnet. Hopefully we can hit mainnet like end of October, or maybe a permission version slightly before Avalanche Summit. And then over the next couple of months, we're going to add incentivized testnets for each new chain as we open up. So we've got a ton of tokens specifically designed at those users, and liquidity as well. That's the main piece, right? Is getting the counterparties who may not like each other comfortable with deploying on each other's dexes.
So today on the pod, it's sort of a first on many levels. First time that we all wear black. First time that we have 6 people on the pod.
Yeah, Nate, we've been waiting for this ETH ETF to be live. It's finally live. It's like, dude, it feels really weird to be here. But, okay, ETF is live. Like, okay, like now what, right? Like, is ETH to 40,000 immediately, or what's going to happen? Just my thoughts, like as being a trader, like what does this mean now for the ETF price? What do you guys think?
Immediately, nothing. I think
nothing,
everyone's just sort of waiting for the election to happen, because that's sort of the more interesting piece, like economically. So everyone's just that's probably when we're going to see a pop.
I do know what will happen next, though. It has nothing to do with the ETH ETF, but it's going to be an AVAX ETF.
There is an AVAX ETP in Europe, and it's been listed for some time. So yeah.
As much as I want to believe that, what I've heard from people who seem like they know what they're talking about is there has to be futures in the States that are regulated by the CFTC that are alive for a while and build up a decent track record before they can go forward with an ETF. So I think we've seen the two big ones, Bitcoin and Ethereum, and it's going to be a little while I mean, we're definitely going to see everyone speculating on crypto Twitter before that. But, if we saw AVAX ETF this year or Cosmos, add an ETF this year or even next year, I think I'd be surprised.
There's no other game in town, man.
So the bull case, by the way, in my view, for the ETH ETF is it seems so far that there is more buy demand for that than I had heard from some, especially like Bitcoin Maximus, Beef, and others, that it's like, well, TradFi really just wants access to crypto. They got that with Bitcoin, so it's not going to get no activity at all, but it's actually getting a fair bit. And the amount of activity that ETH needs relative to Bitcoin to move the price is quite a bit less. For one, it's a smaller market cap, but the other is there's a lot less relative to the market cap available in like centralized exchanges, because a lot of ETH will get pulled into staking, a lot of it will get pulled into DeFi, et cetera. And so the supply on centralized exchanges, where I presume this ETH is being bought, is quite a bit lower. It's like at all-time lows, basically. And so I think, this kind of consistent structural demand that comes from the ETF is, I think, almost certainly from a new group of people. It's real net inflows, and it doesn't take that much to have like a real impact over time. So I don't expect there to be like a huge surge right away, but I think that it does put ETH like into a stronger like upward trajectory relative to if there had been no ETF. And then all of crypto is so correlated that it likely pulls the entire industry up.
I think I might be the only person in the room who thinks that ETFs are long-term not bullish for crypto. I think you just end up with a bunch of inactive tokens long-term. I mean, great for Bitcoin. I think it's a good Bitcoin sort of bull case. It's kind of like saying, I can't wait to get the latest app on my old, rotary telephone. TradFi needs to come to crypto. Crypto doesn't need to go to TradFi. That's my opinion.
I kind of think both personally, and especially, a lot of that may end up being productive if they get approval to run validators under the ETFs. So then you have this new group that's probably an uncorrelated group to the current validator set now validating the network.
Yeah, I sort of think also like there's, different investment vehicles have different sort of like tax implications for different people in different countries. So the more tools that you have, like, tools that may not be interesting to you may be super interesting to, I don't know, some portfolio manager, out of Spain or in New York, or, a family office somewhere else, or, a lone investor in a weird jurisdiction. So access is just probably a good thing for all, but I do agree with the sentiment of like, maybe, having Ethereum, ETH in an ETF, potentially less interesting than ETH on chain, right?
With a Forbes article that it's called "The Rise of Crypto's Billion-Dollar Zombies," and there's a paywall on it, but I want to just point this out. Last year, Ripple's XRP ledger earned a mere $583,000 in fees processing transactions across its network. In Wall Street parlance, that would give XRP a price-to-sales ratio of 61,689. NVIDIA's price-to-sale ratio is 37. Okay. This shows that it's not about anything except the meme value, not the actual price to sales ratio. And this is the piece that is the central crux of why people are going to buy, because there's no other game in town where you have a price to sales ratio of 62,000. The best game in town is 37, and it's still related to revenue, and it's still related to customers and real things. That is not the case in crypto. There's no price to sales ratio of Bitcoin or ETH or the validators, nothing. None of that matters. The ETH ETF is a meme coin ETF built on the meme of ETH and crypto.
I like that take. I think the strongest counter argument that I've heard for ETFs is that one major reason to hold crypto is because it's less correlated to the other markets. And by onboarding those as ETFs, you're likely to increase the correlation of crypto asset price movement to equities and other, traditional instruments. That might be true. I can see the argument there, but I don't think it necessarily drives the correlation high enough to make it so that you don't want to hold it. And then secondly, especially these more platform-oriented blockchains like Ethereum and some of the others, the value prop is way beyond the uncorrelated argument. It's like that's one of like 5 reasons to hold it.
Yeah, right, that whole you know, having crypto being another asset class that you can invest in that's uncorrelated to other markets, like, sometimes it's true and sometimes, it's just levered S&P, but that's because like the Fed is just so active in the markets that when they dramatically increase the money supply, right, all risk assets are just going to do well and vice versa, right? Which then begs the question, like, okay, when we look at the government, right, it has such a huge impact on crypto. And this is part of the reason why I think like the election cycle and Polymarket are just like super interesting. Like right now, Polymarket seems to have found great product market fit, and it does seem like maybe the mentality around crypto is starting to shift, hopefully for the better. But I'm eternally optimistic with these things. I'm just wondering, how do you guys think about the election? I mean, especially because like we have a lot of builders here, right? So it actually affects your lives. You guys are building things. Most of you, I mean, Docs who, but some of you guys are in the U.S. How do you think about the election and how hopeful, not hopeful?
The stupid thing about this is that like it's just technology. It's just a third party ledger. Like everything else is just nonsense. It's just a ledger where everyone can verify the ledger. That's the tech, and like everything else outside of that is just talk. Did the thing happen? Yes or no? Like, okay, great. So then both parties, wherever you are, whatever your political affiliation, everybody should agree to that. It's completely not political. It's just about math. And like, so I'm bullish. Like it's gonna come one way or the other. There's no other game in town. We've tapped out the stock market. You're not going to get any more value out of that. The only other place to make money is in crypto, and everybody knows it.
One thought on my side, I think it almost can't get worse in the U.S. Because you have Gary Gensler, who's a really like true bad faith regulator, but he's so bad faith that it's long-term bullish because he's suing everyone and losing so badly that like several SEC attorneys got sanctioned recently in a Utah-based crypto case because they were found to be abusing their power. So let's say Kamala wins, Gary Gensler stays in, continues to attack the industry. He'll lose his cases probably, and then now we have case law protecting us.
I don't think there's any way that he'll stay in. I think Cuban is like now advising them, and I don't see that happening at all.
Yeah, low likelihood. But that would be like a worst case scenario, and it's still long-term bullish because he's so aggressive that he's losing every case, and then that gives us, case law to protect the industry. And then in a better case, let's say someone who's more pro-crypto wins and puts Hester Peirce at the head of the SEC as an example, then you get explicitly fair treatment. And then that's fast bullish, and the other is slow bullish. So it's almost like I feel like we are kind of obviously in the worst possible place right now relative to 5 years in the future, because a bad or a good head of the SEC, because the U.S. courts are a lot more rational, it feels like, is likely to result in better treatment of the industry 5 years from now. Like it can't really get worse than it is now.
It's funny though, like 5 years ago, we were like, try to take the cold, crypto out of my cold, dead hands. And now we're like begging for the government to like give us the stamp of approval. Like back in the day, this was like, pizza day with Bitcoin. Like we just wanted to buy stuff with our own currencies. And like, now we're like waiting for the ETF.
Chris Dixon said something at a talk recently that really struck me, which he was like, look, he's like, he talks to a lot of really young people who are super smart and trying to decide what to do with their lives, right? And he gets approached by people and they say like, look, should I go into crypto or should I go into AI, for example? And he's like, can you give me a guarantee right now that if I go work for a crypto protocol and do whatever, like, is someone going to come after me, government or whatever? And he's like, unfortunately, I just cannot, tell you that no one is going to come after you. That's the regulatory environment we currently live in. And he's like, and it is actually driving a lot of talent, either into other industries or into other countries. And, I am genuinely hoping that whoever wins in November, that changes. That's, I think, the big thing.
Totally. What I would add about the AI piece is that there's no guarantee that government won't sue you for AI. That's why we see so many founders leaving OpenAI and starting their own company, because they know that the alignment between human rights and AI is just completely off.
I'm a little bit less optimistic on the political forefront, although I am a little bit more optimistic on the crypto forefront. I think on one side of the coin, you see a government that's just going to eternally print money. And on the other side of the coin, you have a government that's just going to eternally print money, but a little bit slower and more responsibly. They all end in basically the same destination, and that's money's worth nothing, and crypto ends up just sort of taking over by the end.
But on what time scale, right? And I'm only going to live another, 40 years, 50 years, I don't know, right? Let's see. Hopefully AI maybe can get me to bridge further than that. But yeah, I'm impatient. I want to see it now.
They'll be downloading your consciousness onto a computer drive, so you'll live infinitely.
Rock and roll, dude.
Yeah, that's just a copy, though. I don't know if I'm getting the first-hand experience on that one.
Well, then that brings up a very existential question, which is, what is consciousness? What is the soul?
Come on, let's go. Let's go. Let's go.
Talk about another 5 hour long Hoskinson podcast coming up.
What's funny to me, because I red pilled into this industry, reading from Bitcoin to Burning Man and beyond. Like that was like my treatise, like my Marxist manifesto, like at the time, and like now seeing all the like how we're just trying to pull TradFi into DeFi is really funny to me. Like that hasn't really been a lot of innovation. I actually think the meme coins, as dumb as it is, I think this is like the future. This is a new innovation that has nothing to do with fundamental underlying value at all. And like, our first meme coin of currency and money, these like collective hallucinations that these things are real in the context of, democracy, right? Like these ideas that we just come up with that we are clear that these are real, but these are just memes that live inside of our head. Whereas like with a meme coin, like you see people create value out of nothing that has no value at all. At least it's a new asset class. So yeah, we'll see some really wild stuff, I think, in the near term. I mean, in the Maori tradition, like, a river is very real. Like it's like your ancestor and your kin. And these rivers, I mean, they're, whether or not it's a quote unquote person or conscious or sentient or whatever is irrelevant. But if you give a river rights, it has the ability to defend itself from pollution and to defend itself from poisoning other local communities. So, this gets into the earlier.
Well, I think maybe in the future we can talk about the DeFi podcast on rivers as people and account managers.
Yeah.
But I think for now, this is probably a pretty good place to end this podcast. Yeah, closing remarks from myself. I kind of like your take on meme coins. It has shifted my opinion on meme coins a little bit, especially when you consider the fact that we all trade meme coins every day. There's really no difference between the two. So it's kind of an interesting take.
Yeah, I'm excited to try out Landslide. Let's go. Yeah, thank you, Nathan, for coming on the pod.
Yeah.
Really appreciate your time, man.
Great pod. Yeah, super fun.
I'm going to do my marketing things and say, don't forget to follow the DeFi podcast. And also don't forget to follow GoGoPool at GoGoPool_. And then also don't forget to follow Landslide.
Landslide_labs.
For all things AI and ayahuasca, where do we follow the Anything But Web3 podcast, Breevie?
Don't forget to follow Anything But Web3, the podcast. It's the best place to be with all your favorite Web3 builders, where we talk about random things. We talk about business, we talk about marketing strategies, but we also, and I'm the host. Yes, I didn't lead with that. Yeah, but yes, please follow Anything But Web3 as well at Anything But Web. Trace.
All All right. Well, thanks everyone for watching, and thank you guys all for attending. See you guys next time.